Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Carl. I'm a Bob Ross certified painting instructor. I can't believe I've hit 1,000 subscribers. I greatly appreciate your support. If you do enjoy the content, please consider liking and subscribing. You'll notice this video format is a little bit different than normal. When I was filming, I noticed that the audio failed after the fact. So we'll go through the video. It'll be a little bit different. I'll do some voiceover throughout the process. I hope that's okay. I do apologize. But I really wanted to show you this painting. We're going to do Bob's painting Gray Mountain. It's very challenging, but a lot of fun. So let's start painting. So our canvas is a 16 by 20 canvas, covered in gray gesso, which I allowed to dry. And then I covered it with a very thin coat of liquid white, which is wet. Here are the colors you'll need to paint the picture. And I have a 2-inch brush that I went into a little bit of Indian yellow. And I'm just doing some X strokes. So I'm just continuing to cover the canvas. We're going to add a little bit of water here. So I'm just doing horizontal strokes with the 2-inch brush. And here I just added some yellow ochre, same brush. So just some yellow ochre, and I'm again doing some more X strokes just right above the Indian yellow. And then I'm reflecting some down into the water using horizontal strokes. Just reloading, and now I have some bright red right above the yellow ochre. So again, just doing some X strokes, blending it into the colors. Just be careful with the red. You don't want to go down into the very bright areas. We want to keep that on the top and the bottom. And then again, I reflected some of the bright red into the water. Now I mixed up a little lavender color with alizarin crimson and phthalo blue. And I'm going to put this in the very top corners and then also reflect a little bit into the water. And while we're at it, I took some of that lavender color and just with a 2-inch brush, I'm just tapping some very simple clouds. And I put some on that side as well. Just little tapping strokes. And then I took a clean and dry 2-inch brush and just softened the clouds in the sky. And for the mountain, we're looking for a darker mixture. This first mountain will be a little bit lighter, but this is a mixture of black, Prussian blue, and a little bit of Van Dyke. But you can see it's a little bit to the blue side. And then I did add a little white for this first mountain. So again, with the knife, little roll of paint, and I'm really scrubbing into the canvas grain. So really pushing the pigment, and then we're scraping away the excess. Don't be afraid to really scrub in there. So here I have the 1-inch brush. This is the 1-inch brush that I used for the liquid white. I'm just blending and sliding the paint, shaping the mountain. You can start creating, the shadows and the highlights, getting a visual of what your mountain will look like. In this painting, we have 2 layers of mountain, so this is the back layer. With the liquid white on there, we can blend, soften, which is really nice. If this was a dry canvas, it'd be very challenging to do. And here I'm just softening the base a bit. Now with a little bit of white and a little bit of black, so I have a gray color. I'm just going to start shaping in the highlights. You really want such little pressure. The canvas will take what it wants. And we're looking for the paint to break and create that illusion of texture, rocks, and things happening on the mountain. As I go down the mountain, you'll notice the handle start to move to the right, kind of upward, and then it's also flattening towards the canvas as the paint is coming off. So I'm just kind of dancing around, thinking about where the light would hit, but very little pressure. And you can see on the highlights I'm flowing to the right, and then in a little bit we'll get to the shadows where I'm going to flow to the left. And to create distance in your paintings, if you notice that the base color for the mountain is a little bit softer. And then for the shadow color, I mixed in a little bit of Prussian blue and white, but it's very little blue. So the contrast on this distant mountain is minimal, and then you'll see the difference in the next mountain that I do. So using this small part of the knife, I'm just dancing in the shadows, very subtle. I like the small part of the knife, I have better control. But still leave some of the dark, some of the base color. Adds depth to your picture. And now I'm just going back with a little bit more of that gray color and just fine-tuning some areas. And then take a 1-inch brush or a 2-inch brush, and I'm going to tap in the same direction as the highlights and shadows. And we're going to create a little mist. And then very soft, don't go too far up into the mountain. Just the base, and create that subtle mist. Now this is a little challenging. We're going into a lot of paint, but I basically took the mountain base. So that was black, Prussian blue, a little bit of Van Dyke, but not adding the white. So this is a little bit darker. And then you're going to see how this pushes that distant mountain far away. And we're blending and sliding with a 1-inch brush. You can certainly use a 2-inch brush with this. So this is a smaller mountain in the slight foreground. Again, thinking of your angles, and then we're softening and blending. And notice I didn't go too low because we will have some of the water show through. And then this is just pretty much titanium white. And again, little roll of paint. Just let the canvas take what it wants. But look at the difference in mountains. A little bit more contrast in the mountain in the foreground, and then it pushes that other mountain way far away. And just think about, how the light's hitting your mountains. And don't be afraid to, go over notice I'm using light pressure as I go back through. Just don't push too hard. So this is a little bit more Prussian blue and a little phthalo blue into the white. If you want to dull it, you can add a little black, but it's a little brighter. And again, I'm using the small part of the knife, but I wanted this mountain to be a little bit more contrasty. In here, I'm taking the 1-inch brush, and we're tapping just subtly, create that mist. Very soft, kind of like a whisper. Now for the background hills, we're going with kind of a medium blue. So this is the mountain shadow mixture with a little bit of Prussian blue. So basically you can do Prussian blue, phthalo blue, and a little bit of white. No, we don't want this to be too dark, but we're just tapping 1-inch brush or 2-inch brush just to create the illusion of some distant foothills. So just tapping. And then this is a clean brush, and I'm tapping more of the base of the foothills just to soften them. Create a little bit of mist. Very soft. So this next layer, I had a little bit more Prussian blue and a little bit of black, just to darken it slightly from the background. And again, we're just tapping. Tap, tap, tap. You can use a 1-inch brush or a 2-inch brush. And then I'm going to pull a little bit of reflection. So straight down, small strokes because the foothills aren't that tall. And then I'm going to lift up just very slightly to create the illusion of, who knows, maybe it's some distant trees. And on the knife, I use some titanium white and a little bit of black, so a gray color. I wanted it a little bit muted, but horizontal, keep the water horizontal, and I'm just cutting in the water line. And then we're going to be adding a little bit more black for the next layer here. And I'm just tapping in, creating that illusion of depth by adjusting the color a little bit darker. So again, just tapping. And I'm going to be pulling a reflection, so straight down. It's important that you're pulling as straight down as possible. Helps add to the realism of your water. And I'm just taking a dry brush, pulling straight down, and then I'm going to go across just a whisper, which kind of sets in your reflection. And again, I'm going back to that gray color, cutting in the water line. And then here I've mixed up kind of a green color, so taking the blue that was in the brush, and if you go into some of the cad yellow, a little bit of sap green, I'm just tapping some highlights onto the foothills. As we move closer, we see a little bit more detail. So again, just some nice greens coming through. And then I'm going to reflect a little bit down into the water. Not too much. And then again, we're cutting in our water line. Make sure it's straight. And I'm just fluffing a few more details on the foothills. For the dark color, it's midnight black, phthalo green, a little bit of Prussian blue, Van Dyke brown, and alizarin crimson. Just a dark color. And I have my fan brush. This is the smaller fan brush. And just with the corner of the brush, I'm tapping. And as it goes down, I'm getting a little bit wider to the base. So we're just creating the indication of some happy evergreen trees. This is the bigger one on the right side. Kind of having a good time. A little story is when I was in 5th grade, my art teacher, who I still see to this day, many years later, but we were painting trees, kind of some Bob Ross style trees. We had little canvases, and I painted the perfect tree. And I was so excited, but then I tried to fix one tiny little part. And then my tree started growing. And I kept trying to fix it. So within about 5 minutes, I turned what was a really nice evergreen tree into a pyramid. So my tip to you as you're painting, sometimes less is more. And as Bob says, we don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents. You kind of learn as you paint to make things work and to not always fix things. Sometimes, even imperfections are perfection. And I think that's really powerful. So here I just took my 1-inch brush in the same dark color, and I'm just scrubbing in some color for the bushes, and then also for the reflection. So we're pulling straight down. Just very soft. Think about your kind of the lay of the land. So pulling down, and then I'm going to take a clean brush and then pull down and then pull across. And that quickly we can create that reflection. And then we'll also do some highlight reflections too. So again, with a little bit of the 2 brown colors and white. I'm just putting in some trunk indications. And then for the evergreen trees, I'm just mixing up some of that base color with a little bit of cadmium yellow, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre. We get a nice green. And if you need to thin it, you can see me here. I'm going into a little bit of liquid white, a little bit brighter, and I have a little bit more cad yellow. And we're just going to bring in some highlights. Save some of the dark. Don't overdo it. Light's coming from the right side. Just a nice, powerful evergreen tree. It'll be a nice view. And let's not forget the little ones here. And as you go down the tree, just make sure you get a little bit softer towards the base, a little bit lighter. So again, just right side of the brush. And now here I have a 1-inch brush, and we're going to be focusing on some bushes. So I'm pulling, when I'm loading the paint, you want a fair amount of paint, and I'm loading in one direction, and it'll create a rounded side in the brush. And then I'm just slightly pressing. And then I try to soften, under the highlighted area, so let it blend in with the darker color. Here I'm reflecting some of the highlights. So we got a little cad yellow. I'm reflecting it. The reflections don't have to be perfect. Here I added a little bit of yellow ochre. Again, use liquid white or paint thinner if you need to make it thinner, to make sure it sticks. And then don't forget to save the dark areas and just work in layers. Reload often. And then here I'm doing some more reflections. Just trying to get the colors to match the bushes. And then I added a little bit of green. And we'll get a little green in there just to change the flavor. And then with a 2-inch brush, this is very delicate. So 2 hairs and some hair. Pull down, very soft. And then I'm going to pull from the outside to the center. You want to be very careful. I don't want to get too much color into that center area of the lake. So I'm pulling from the outside inward, horizontal strokes, very soft. And you can see it's just slightly moving the paint in the water, just a little bit. Now in this case, you'll notice I'm pulling horizontal to blend it. I wanted to add a little bit more highlight, so that's what I did here. So I just brought a little bit of reflections just in that area, and then I'm going to reflect, pull down, and then soften. I wanted that color just to stand out a little bit more. And then with the knife, and I just took some Van Dyke Brown and a little bit of dark sienna, I'm just shaping in where some sand would be, some of the land, and just softening it into the bushes. But look at that reflection of the bushes in there, into the water. It'd be a nice area to go on a kayak. Go take some pictures. And I'm just doing the left side here, adding a little bit of sand. Very soft. Again, thinking about the shape. And then here's some white added in with the browns, just to add some highlights. So let the canvas take what it wants, just like a mountain. Very, very, very soft. And then with straight white, I'm going to cut in a water line. Now notice the background water lines are a little bit more muted because that was a gray color. So these ones I want these to be a little bit brighter. So keeping that knife horizontal, so all my strokes are horizontal. Just some water rippling off the sand. And here I'm just putting a few little ripples out into the lake. And here I took a fan brush with a little bit of the green color, and I'm just pressing in some indications of some grasses, maybe right where they would meet the sand or dirt. So just some indications, just to change it up from the other bushes. But I think that gives a little bit more detail. And you know me, I like to go in and add a few little highlights on top, just to bring in a little bit of vibrance. And I think it's time to sign it. I really hope you enjoyed Gray Mountain. It's got some challenge, but it's just such a fun painting. You should definitely give it a try. My website is carlvonartistry.com. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my paintings. Happy painting. See you next time.